Hello, welcome to Holding Space for Change. My name is Ruben, and today we're going to be talking about all the things that we talked about. Cool. But we're also going to discuss a couple issues that we had on the table that we didn't get to. Let me say hello to my people. Hello. And you know what I will also do? I should also put out a list of all the things, all the places that we've gone to. Maybe we should do that. Let's do that. This will be my last daily episode. I might move to weekly, but I'm going to spend my energy on a couple other projects. Also making music again. I'm feeling like I can make music again. But today I wanted to go over all of the topics that we talked about and what I've learned for every topic. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Like, I'm not sure. You know what? I don't know if, Uncle, you've seen the work that I used to do. Maybe I'll share one of my videos for a second to show y'all what I'm going to do and what I'm going to go back to doing. Should we go to the Harriet Tubman? And probably should go to the Harriet Tubman, right? Let's drop it. So, but these take a while. So let me do that. I also wanted to thank you all for being on this journey with me, and I hope you can stay for this episode so you can see all the things that we talked about and all the things that we've learned. Like it's been a lot, but I'm gonna go back to making as many of these type of videos as I can, but they're going to be even more like radical. You know, here we go. This is Times We Changed the World. In this series, we'll look at stories of real superheroes from our past so we can learn how to make our world better today. Let's start with my mom's favorite superhero of all time. Can you guess who it is? No, it's not Iron Man and the Avengers or Wonder Woman and the Justice League. It's Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Who was Harriet Tubman? Throughout her life, Harriet Tubman worked as a nurse, a spy, a cook, a laundress, and a scout. She was also one of the conductors of the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman was born 200 years ago in the year 1822. She lived to be 93 years old. She spent her life making the world a better place for everyone, especially women and black people. She was born into slavery at a time in America when people with their skin color were forced to work all the time with no pay. Back then, America was still involved with the transatlantic slave trade. This meant that African people were being stolen and treated like slaves. They were treated like things, like tools or toys or robots, bought and sold. Even children had to work as slaves. The laws were so messed up back then that women weren't even allowed to vote. That means that more than half of the people in America were being ignored. This is what Harriet Tubman worked her whole life to change. She wanted everyone to live free and with respect. Harriet's whole family, her brothers, her sisters, her mother, her father, had to work on a plantation all day and night. As a 5-year-old, Harriet had to work by herself taking care of babies. And if any baby ever cried, she would get hurt or yelled at. So what did she do? She really didn't want to be a slave. One day, she heard some people talking about a secret way for people to run away to get to safety, and it was called the Underground Railroad. And in 1849, at the age of 29, she found it. But it wasn't what she thought it was. What was the Underground Railroad, and how did it work? Well, it wasn't exactly an underground train. It was a name for a group of people working together to help people like Harriet Tubman get free. The people working with the Underground Railroad were already free. Free white people, free black people, Jewish and First Nations people, all working together to hide people who were being chased by slavers. But if anyone in the Underground Railroad got caught helping people, they could go to jail. But they were brave, and they still wanted to help Harriet escape. They used secret songs to talk to each other and share information about how to get away. Harriet had to walk 90 miles from Maryland to Pennsylvania where she could get free from the slavers. Do you know how long it would take to walk 90 miles? It would take you 3 weeks. That's how long it took Harriet. Harriet traveled through many forests at night, and during the day, she hid in the houses of people working with the Underground Railroad. She learned how to travel using the stars as a map. She trusted her intuition, and her dreams gave her clues. But Harriet didn't just escape. She went back more than 17 times to free as many people as she could. Every time she went back, she could have gotten caught or killed or forced to work as a slave again. But in the end, she helped more than 300 people get free. Do you know what the hardest thing was for Harriet Tubman? She said it wasn't the slavers or the police chasing her. It wasn't the long cold nights walking and running and hiding. It was the people she went back to free who didn't want to run away with her. Some people were too afraid to try to leave. Imagine walking for 3 weeks to help someone escape, only to have that person say, "No, I don't want to run away with you. I'm too afraid." Harriet said she could have been able to free over 1,000 more people if they were only willing to run away with her. What can Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad teach us about freedom and changing the world? Harriet Tubman risked her life over and over to help other people. She said she could not enjoy her freedom until her friends and her family were free too. Because freedom is better when you share it with others. And freedom is easier to get when you have help from others. To be a good ally, you have to be willing to stand beside your friends, even if it means you might get caught or in trouble. Harriet's allies in the Underground Railroad were safe from slavery, but they wanted to help. Allies are the best kinds of friends. They say, "I want you to be as free as me, and I'm willing to give something or risk something to help." Brave people like Harriet Tubman helped change the world. But now the world needs more brave people like her. We need more allies, more people who aren't in any danger themselves, but are willing to help people who are. Who are your heroes, and who are the people who help them? Thank you. This is Times We Change the World. It loops. All right, so yeah, that was a video that I made a year ago. And I'm gonna take some of the things that I learned from these conversations and try to put them into more videos and produce as much of that kind of content as I can. And so that's kind of where my energy is going to shift to. Before we get to what I have learned, is there anything on anybody's mind that they want to talk about? While you type that, I am going to go to our first Facebook tab because I asked a few questions. So I kind of want to deal with them before I go. So the first question that I asked was, are there any positive things about COVID's new normal? Sarah says no. I like it when people are just straight up just like, nah, no, nothing. And that was funny. But moving on, Warda, I think I pronounced that right. I'm always scared about pronouncing everyone's name wrong. Anyway, it says online events are made more accessible. You know, now when something's happening online or an event's happening, I don't have to worry about transportation. It's like, okay, do I want to go to that Zoom or not? You know, like this is an online event, which is kind of exciting. It means we've had like 30 plus of them, but yeah. So online events, I've saved a ton of time and money, eliminating the commute and eating out. Cool. Enjoying all the alone time. Yeah, this is, I mean, in some ways for introverts, this has been a nice time in a way, and not feeling the pressure to always have to be out. This is a really cool comment. The time I get with my friends and family has become far more precious to me. I think this COVID has really shown a light about what's really happening in a way, and we take people for granted. So I know some people who were talking about not having hugs in a long time, you know, or like just even just like we were taking people for granted, and this has forced us not to. I don't think that necessarily makes it a good thing, but that realization is a good realization. Seeing kids play outside in the neighborhood. I mean, sometimes for me it was kind of weird. Like I'd go outside and I'd see more people outside during the lockdown than I was, you know what I mean? Maybe people were home, but like people were just going for walks, but people are out. There have been broad environmental effects of people staying home. People are spending less money on gas, which is reducing fossil fuel burning. That's a positive. Candace says she saves at least $500 a month on gas. Kevin says the truth is coming out and it's unavoidable. We will not go back to normal. And I think you're talking about here like just the fact that we're all home, we're able to really witness some of the social injustice and see that, you know, people are talking about saving money, social distancing. People can't hug me anymore. Yeah, some people are really into the not being hugged thing. Social pressure has really changed. I don't have to sit beside anybody on transit. Less grind culture. I think it's changing the way we think about work in a way, like, or the type of work and what work is essential and work isn't essential. I think that's very interesting. we've had the chance to let go of some bad habits. I know who I was when COVID started and who I am now is very different, just because of all the time that I've had to reflect. So that's been kind of a blessing, if I could say that. While there have been some positives, like creating routines and having more time for things that I couldn't get to before, creative ways to connect with family and friends, I still would rather pre-COVID. True. Cecil says rebellion, eviction courts are closed, and the environment is cleaner. So these are some of the COVID positives. I think it's changed the way people date. It's changed the way people think about dating. It's changed the way people eat. It's changed a lot of things, I think. But I think for me, it really put pressure on the system and shown us where the cracks are. You know, it showed us that like nurses and people on the front lines and like even online shopping and grocery stores and pharmacies and just the difference between essential work and frivolous work, you know, and it's really made me think about like the NBA and how much entertainers get paid very differently, you know? So yeah, I know this is a really summarized COVID conversation, but that's kind of some of it. If you want to tell me about what you think some positives are, some COVID positives are, I'm still taking answers for that. The next thing that I want to get to before I get to the big review is this was a big question. We never got to get to it. And I'll just tell you what I think. So I asked the question, do you think that the Black Lives Matter movement / request is in danger of being co-opted? And I asked this question because if you check the Black Lives Matter demands and you really look at what they're into and what they're trying to do, they're really a continuation of the abolition movement, which is to say that a Black Lives Matter works in the same energy of the people who were trying to abolish slavery, because slavery did not go away. Slavery did not go away. It turned into the legal system. And that's why there's all this pressure and all this criticism being put on police, because the truth is that the Black Lives Matter movement is trying to fight the same unjust system that was involved in the transatlantic slave trade, right? And that needs to be said very clearly. So there are people who've been working to change the way prisons work. I don't know if you've seen the documentary, The 13th, but if you have, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen the documentary 13th, it is free on Netflix, so please check that out. The documentary 13th really outlines how corrupt the prison industry complex is and how it slaves people and how much damage it does to communities. And having a police system that can do things like carding, that can do things like racial profiling, and with relation to all the other laws where they criminalize poverty and things like that, the Black Lives Matters protest is not just, it is about getting police to stop killing Black people, but it's also about critiquing the whole prison industry complex, which is a continuation of slavery, right? And my concern when I watch this is we come out with Black Lives Matter and everybody's into it, and then things get off. And when I say they get off, I mean one day we're just posting pictures of Black. Why? What is that about? So what is that? Is that going to deal with the question that we're asking? And the question that we're asking is deep police reforms. And that relates to police unions, that relates to city budgets, that relates to weaponry. That's what we're talking about. How do we get here? And then I hear conversations, and this is me personally, you know what I mean? If you want to at me, but I hear all this conversation about support Black business. Cool. But we're talking about dismantling and challenging the prison industry complex. We're talking about dismantling a system that came from slavery. We're not talking. I didn't think we were talking about, you know, supporting Black business. That's important, but that's not the conversation that we're trying to have today. Black Lives Matter is a critique of police and prisons and human rights as it relates to America and the prison system and policing, period. You know what I mean? And now in my news, when I'm watching the news, every day they might have some anti-Black racism piece, but the anti-Black racism piece that they have is something not to do with dismantling and defunding the police. You know what I mean? Like, they want to talk about Black scholarships. They want to talk about Black arts. All that shit is cool, but that's not what we're today. Black Lives Matter, when you check it, is about defunding or refunding the police. It's about dealing with the prison industry complex. It's about decriminalizing Blackness. It's about demilitarizing the police. That's what it's supposed to be about. So I see all this righteous indignation, all this anti-Black racism, all this stuff, and people standing up to fight and talk about the thing that we weren't here to talk about in the first place. You know, like, so I'm asking the question, do you think the Black Lives Matter movement, the requests are in danger of being co-opted? And I mean co-opted by people who have other goals that are not necessarily. And here's my thing. If you want to say Black scholarships, cool. If you want to say Black arts, cool. But you better say defund the police first. You know what I mean? I want you to say defund the police. Oh, and also scholarships. I don't want you just to say scholarships. You know what I mean? Because you're taking the energy and putting it in a place that you want to do that, you start your own movement. You know? Don't jump on a bandwagon and try to steer it somewhere else. That's not cool to me, you know? And especially if that bandwagon is directly going to go into your pockets. Like, yo, you know, I'm down for the cause. I'm really into Black rights and all that stuff. And also, can you shop at my store? What? No, we're talking about defunding the police. We're talking about protecting the people who are most vulnerable. Most vulnerable. You know what I'm talking about? That's poor people. That's trans people. That's people on the streets. That's like the people who are at the bottom. We're talking because the police attack them. We're talking about supporting them. We're talking about like expunging people who got arrested for weed. We're talking about that type of stuff, you know? That's what we're talking about. And if you're not talking about that, then you're taking the energy for yourself. That's how I feel about it, you know? And that's what's been worrying me about it. So that's what this was. And I didn't want to leave without having that conversation and saying that straight, you know? I'm just asking all of us to check ourselves, you know? That's it. And as it relates to things that I've learned in terms of talking to Black people about Black Lives Matter and defunding the police, a lot of them are not comfortable with the language. A lot of them say, defund the police. I wish they used a better phrase. And I hear that. Maybe they could have used a better phrase, but at the same time, they didn't. And you know what they mean. What is it? Toronto police spent $1 million on bullets. They only shot their gun 16 times in service of duty, and they spent $1 million on bullets. What is that? Where that money could go? Okay, so I think I've made that point clear. Now I'm going to get to some comments. Then we get to the review. Woo! Okay, so I said that. All right, I'm okay. Uncle Howie says less is more. So he's probably a proponent of me going to once a week and maybe even promoting it. The reason why I couldn't go once a week is because I just felt like it was too much happening. And when you go through this review, you'll understand there's just too much. Yes, I like that video very much as well. I hope so. And I just hope to create material that other people can share, you know, because these hour-long videos, people are like, too much. Introversion is normalized. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, that's kind of the nice thing about COVID in a way. Can I say that? The nice thing about social distancing, not about COVID, not nice about COVID. COVID positive is that we'll never go back to normal. No, there was no normal to go back to. I would check that out. Yeah, check out The 13th. It's a really good documentary. Okay. Whew. Let's do this. It's not going to be the most graphical video either, but it's going to be beefy. Application window, the story so far. I'm going to run through them. And then if anything jumps out at you of what you learned, type it in, and then I'll get to it. Okay, I promise. The first thing we talked about, the first episode, and I didn't post it to YouTube, was how do we talk about systemic racism with children and our families? And the things that I learned in that episode were there were some people who were a part of the group that aren't a part of the group anymore, and they were talking a lot about really defending capitalism, and the reasons they were giving were like, some of them were personal experiences relating to communism, and some of them were just desires to be rich. And I found that to be, for me, striking and like something that you have to deal with. That like when you're trying to talk to people about systemic change, you always have to take into account their own desires for themselves and their own dreams and their own wants. And that's a real thing. But the thing that I wanted to give in this episode that I don't think I really got to give was two things. So for me, you can use like Harry Potter as an example of systemic racism. If you think about the way the wizards treat the elves, you know what I'm talking about? The way the wizards treat the elves, that's hella racist. Or you can talk about the way the pure bloods and the half bloods and the muggle bloods and Voldemort's racism. That's another example of racism, really, that you can use to explain. And then you go to Avatar, The Last Airbender, and you can think about the Fire Nation as being a colonial power. You can think of the Water Nation as being closer to indigenous-ish. You can think of the Earthbenders as being isolationists, and the Airbenders is also being kind of, you know, they weren't really ready for that. They weren't built for like industrialized war. So when I think about the West and colonization, I also often think about the Fire Nation. So that's kind of some Avatar level things. But the thing that I think the best way to explain systemic racism to somebody who's young or to a family is just using the language of historic advantage and disadvantage, and how that advantage and disadvantage gets to pass on and carry on. You know, if every year I gave you $2 extra, then in 10 years you're gonna have like way more money and you can do way more with that. And you can even talk about the way advantages compound with each other over time. And you can talk about how it relates to gender. You can talk about how it relates to religious persecution. You can talk about how it relates to race. You can talk about a lot of these things, right? So, and it's not just, the way one person feels, it's the way things operate. The next episode we had was White Allies. You remember that episode? And I wanted it to be kind of like what I talked about in the Harriet Tubman video, where it's like, to be an ally, you need to be willing to give something up, kind of like those moms. What are they called? The moms in Portland, the wall of moms, or the dads with leaf blowers. These are white people, right? Stepping up to help. That's allyship to me. You know, allyship isn't telling me that you have black friends. Like, again, allyship isn't about asking people to support your business. Allyship isn't about, you know, donating a little bit of money and then making a bunch of commercials about it. That's not what allyship is about. Allyship is about giving something up for the cause, right? When I think about allyship, I think about the Underground Railroad and the Christian people who helped Harriet Tubman and people abolish slavery. That's what I think about. But what also came up in this episode is white people's own personal feelings about racism and the guilt and all those things. And those things are really a big deal. And they're in the way, in a way. They're like, not in the way, but they take up energy. They take up thought space, right? And we just, sometimes when things are urgent, we need to like move, not acknowledge it, but also move through it. Like, don't get stuck in that, and don't blame yourself for things that you didn't do. I want you to acknowledge yourself for what you will do, you know? But that was a good episode too. Next, we talked about defunding the police and Black Lives Matter's 27 demands. And that was an early episode, but I think what came out in that episode very, very clearly was Black Lives Matter is not only about Black lives. It's about really supporting people who are systemically disenfranchised and people who are systemically discriminated against. It's about First Nation people as well. It's about really people who are at the bottom of the economic and neoliberal totem pole or pyramid. It's about people struggling. It's about decriminalizing poverty. It's about putting resources towards harm reduction and changing the way our society really deals with caring for people in need, you know. And really, when you read it, it reads like a human rights document. It does. It reads like a beautifully written human rights document. And if you have questions about it, and if you felt challenged or called out when I said that there are some of us are accidentally or intentionally opportunists, the way we try to derail the Black Lives Matter movement, read that document. Read it. Go to Black Lives Matter Toronto or Black Lives Matter US and read the document, and really just take it in and see that it's really a human rights declaration. It's there's a lot of love in it. You know, I remember I just thought about, like, people are getting arrested for not having a place to pee, you know, and it's just like people get arrested for sleeping outside, but like white collar crimes happen. Okay, the next episode, we talked about understanding neoliberalism. And this was, to me, an important one because we don't talk about neoliberalism enough, because it's kind of like actually the water that we swim in, and also the media outlets that, see, the next one is media outlets. The media outlets don't talk about neoliberalism because they can't really, because they're kind of bought off. But neoliberalism, the best way to explain it is, I'm going to use Mike Harris in, was he the 90s? He was the premier of Ontario, conservative guy. And he seemed like he was going to make things responsible. I'm a really organized white man and I'm handling business. What he did was he changed a lot of the way Ontario dealt with healthcare and privatized it. And to privatize something means something that was once done by the government, something that was once done, paid for by taxes, and once had a lot of oversight because there was public, community, government involvement, is now being given to the private sector. So now we're gonna use long-term homes, old folks homes, I call them, maybe probably not the proper term, but whatever. Like, instead of the government running them, they started running them for profit. And the thing about profit that I have to make very clear is, profit is not about doing things well. Profit is about doing things to make money. So if I give you $10 and it's your job to make profit on babysitting, whatever, you're going to try to cut corners and give my baby food cheaper so you can take home more. This is not about anybody's intent. This is just about what profit is, right? So you give care to profit people, they're going to cut corners. So Mike Harris gets in and changes and gives away some of the things the government used to do to tell the taxpayer they're going to save the taxpayer money, right? But this is what he does next. After he's done his terms, he goes and works for those now corporations that are now taking care of old folks. Now Mike Harris is running it, and he's running it for a profit. And he's getting a nice salary, running it, cutting these corners, making this money. And COVID hits, and the long-term care homes ain't ready. Why aren't they ready? They're not ready because we gave them to the private sector, and the private sector don't give a damn about people. The private sector gives a damn about profit. So COVID really just shown that. And it's neoliberal, because the way the neoliberal tries to swing it to you, and they try to tell you that we want a smaller government. We want to reduce taxes. We want to make people more responsible for themselves. That's what they say, right? But really, it's about offloading essential services for people onto profit-making people, right? It's about electing people to tell you that they're about traditional Christian values, but really, they're about gutting the government and making it so their friends can make money, giving their friends tax breaks. That's what it's about. So, and this goes for a lot of other things, like the way our classes get bigger, and the way private schools are pushed. It goes for a lot of things, but that's kind of how neoliberalism, and it works also with capitalism, but it's actually a worse form of capitalism. You could theoretically have a capitalism where the government makes sure there's no monopoly and people are playing fairish, and it's not as bad as this. But our government seems to want to make it so that they're friends and they can make as much money as possible. And the government is being used as a tool to change society so that you can have billionaires. That's what's happening. And we don't realize it. We don't talk about that neoliberalism creates societies where individuals and corporations can get really, really rich, and while other people suffer. And it's about changing society to be that. Okay. Media bias. Now, all right, Ruben, if this is what you're saying, you're making some wild claims. Why? When I watch the news, nobody's talking about that. Why aren't they talking about that? Because of media bias. What I mean is, who owns the news that you watch? Who owns your information sources, right? Hold on, let me take a minute and see what people are saying. It can't get any clearer. No. It usually determines literally who's undeserving of life. What does it? Yeah, tell me about this. I like this. What are you saying with this? I heard you have to sign a waiver in America for school. Not sure if that's true, but it's terrifying. It just proves your point further. You do. I mean, now you probably will, because they're sending people to school and it's hella COVID-y. So that's kind of heavy. All right. So answer this question about what is the it determines literally who's deserving or undeserving of life. Yeah, okay. And then I'm going to keep going with the media bias, right? So again, like the way I understand things really simply, just what is the motive behind your action, right? And if you're in a for-profit business, like it or not, you're for profit, and it's not really a beef. Now, the news that we get is for profit. So they're trying to make sure they get as much money. So they don't want to piss off anybody who's going to give them money. And who's going to give them money? First of all, corporate. I think there's supposed to be another R here. Maybe that's how you spell corporate. I don't know. That's close. Corporate. Corporate meaning I have a lot of money. Like, let's go back to like 100 years, 200 years ago when people were just printing press. Who could afford to print a newspaper? Somebody with money. Cool. So if I have money, I'm probably a capitalist, you know? So I'm not really trying to have no conversation about me not being a billionaire. So if you're going to write for my paper, you just can't talk about that. You can't talk about everybody having the same amount of money because I'm rich and I can make the paper. You want to write my paper, you got to write what I like. Cool. And when I think about this, think about like Murdoch or Conrad Black or these cats who own media, right? They own the media that you're into. So what are their politics? And anything that is ever going to be written in that paper has to pass their test. That's the first way how our news gets adulterated. Secondly, if you're a reporter and you want to have an exclusive with a politician, if you criticize that politician, you might only have one interview. So in order to maintain on the good side of the politician, you have to not go too hard on them. And that also goes for police. When something happens, it's really easy to call the police station and say, tell me the story. And then you're going to get the story from the police. So our media is automatically, this is just no individuals, just corporates going to have a say on what's going to be in the paper. Political, you can't criticize the people with the power if you want to talk to them twice. And police, if you want, it's really easy to get crime stories about things and get the police aside, right? The other thing is ads. Newspapers are designed to sell ads and papers. That's what they're designed to do. So oftentimes you want the conversation in the paper to be directed at people who are going to be buying the ad. So yeah, does that make sense? I should say that last part a little bit clearer. As a newspaper, you have to sell the paper to your audience and you have to sell your ads to other companies. So YouTube is a perfect example of this. If I came out with a video talking about how YouTube is the worst thing ever and how let's say McDonald's is a big YouTube sponsor and I don't like McDonald's. If I came out with a video that says I don't like YouTube and I don't like McDonald's and I put that on YouTube, YouTube is not going to be able to sell that video to McDonald's. McDonald's is not going to want anybody to watch that video. So that video would be demonetized. So I would not make any money for that video on YouTube. So I, as a creator, would not, I am disincentivized from making anything critical of the people who could potentially buy my ads. All of these things all work together to ensure that our media in a lot of ways has no teeth. You know what I mean? Okay, now I'm going to get back to what her school waiver, neoliberalism, the older adult home shifting the profit, central work. Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that the people who are the least financially secure or powerful are the ones that get abused most in our society. And you see it in COVID. Who was dying? Old people were dying and they're not working no more, right? They can't work no more. We don't care about them. Black people were dying because, you know, environmental racism. Colored people with precarious labor, migrant workers. The people who are dying are the people who are the least protected, and the least protected and the farthest from the money. You know what I mean? Okay. So this is why the media is not telling you the full story, because of all these reasons. So in order to get honest media, you'd have to get somebody or some people who weren't trying to make any money on the media. And how can you do it as a live? How can you create media for a living and not make any money on it? So there's bias there. So I ask you all, where do you get your media from? Then I asked, what kind of world do you want to live in? And I was like, what kind of education do you want? Me, I would like my education to be free-ish. You know what I mean? Because the more people who have access to education, the better. You know what I mean? And yeah, I want my healthcare also to be free-ish. I want my economy to be flowing-ish, but I don't want any billionaires. I want there to be a cap. I want there to be a max. I want there to be a min, and I want there to be basic income for everybody. And the basic income is solid. You know what I mean? That's what I want. And I'm not worried about innovation being stifled because people like cool stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm not worried about that really at all. And my max would be decent. You know, you can have a house. You know what I mean? You can eat, you'll be fine. Personal freedoms. I think we should have them. Free-ish. That's a good question. I think I think they should. I had this idea, and it was like, in order, as it relates to immigration, it's just a really simple idea, a really small idea. Let's say we're a small town, and you show up new, and you want to join my town, and I say, what do you do? And you say you're a carpenter, and I say, cool, we need a carpenter. Welcome down, welcome in. Cool, simple. You show up and you say you're a carpenter, and I say, we don't need any more carpenters. What else you got? And they say, that's all I got. And we say, would you like to get into computer programming? If you say yes, we'll pay for it. And the person says, yes, cool, your education's free. Bum. I don't know. That doesn't fully answer the question, but something that I wanted to share, just about the way we should include newcomers and the way we should include new people. We should either find out if they have something to contribute off the top and let them in it. If they don't have anything to contribute, we should train them and protect them until they do. So education should be free. But so that's kind of what I was thinking. But I think, there should be something where people are still giving back, whether it's taxes or volunteer hours or something to the community. I don't like the idea of people being in a community and not giving what they can, so I think everybody should participate. As long as you're participating in the society, then I think you should get what you need. And that includes the ability to study and change any job, and that for healthcare too. Yeah, hold on. Neoliberalism is capitalism on steroids. I would say, yeah, but I would say it's worse. Neoliberalism I don't even think it's true capitalism anymore. I think it's like using the government to enslave the population in the name of capitalism, if we're honest. Because the neoliberals, they changed laws, They're changing shit. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yes. The Reagan and Thatcher and trickle down economics. It was all a lie. So that's kind of, but let me get to it. So we talked about COVID conversations. Where am I here? We're talking about COVID conversations, and T came on. We talked about how the virus can mutate. What? We talked about, and this is a shout out to her blog, rainbowintheclouds.com 2020 / you see it? You can see it, right? There you go. And I learned how to put on a mask. You got to hold the straps, put them on, don't touch the front. I learned that. That was cool. We had a conversation with Ben Cook, and that was an amazing conversation also. And what I learned about it, I mean, we saw the picture of the G20 struggle. That was real deep. But the thing that I took out of that conversation was how he had his illusion of our civil society cracked the same way they attacked him. And he went on this, we should probably talk to him again, but he went on this big journey of personal growth and discovery. He had to rebuild his whole idea of what he thought society was, because he thought, I'm going to take a little liberties, but he thought police were like Paw Patrol, he thought they were good guys, and the police were just being used. The police were being used to really shatter anybody who had any kind of different idea for society. They were being used as a fist, and not as a caring, and they were protecting a society that was unjust. And he saw that, and it hurt him. And I think what it made me think about was the way a lot of us are very defensive of the police, or very defensive of wanting society to change, is because we bought into this illusion. And what I fear is that we need to have a rude awakening the way he did. Some of us don't, because, we're oppressed, but some of us that aren't oppressed, imagine if you were living in some futuristic society where 90% of the people were living good, but 10% of the people's energy was just being sucked. So we weren't using any more fossil fuels. We just have 10% of the population, and we just drain their spirits. And we use their spirit drain to power our cars, and nobody has to work, and everything's nice. And imagine if you didn't know. So you're good. And then imagine if you know, and you're like, okay, it sucks, but as long as it's not my spirit, I'm cool. And then imagine if you're one of the people who had your spirit sucked, and then you got to go back to society. What I'm really trying to say is like, most of us who don't want to change the system is because we're in that 90% of people whose spirits are not being sucked. You know what I mean? Our lives are good. But what will it take for us to realize that the way we're living is wrong? What will it take? That's what I'm wondering. And I know for people who are oppressed and people who know about struggle, they're ready to go because they know what the pain is. But if you never knew what the pain is, how do we get you to see that we could still live better? So that's what I took from the conversation with Ben. But that was a good one. Using social media for change, I think that one. I just want to shout out K-pop for what they did to Trump and stuff, and how they turned the White Lives Matter hashtag into K-pop. I think that was really cute. Also, I think Black Lives Matter itself was a hashtag. I think Black Girls Magic is pretty cool. What else? This is the use of social media that I'm into. I've learned a lot from social media. People who share like resources and little pictures and PDFs and infographics. I love that stuff. So thank you for all that. That's a big deal. I've learned a lot. Yeah. And the Khan Institute taught me some things too. Hashtags K-pop. All right, let's keep it going. Then we had the episode about good police. I think it was because a family member spoke to me about not wanting to demilitarize. There was another word for it. When the police kill, they want to take away the deadly force from the police. What's that called? And there's a 2-minute delay. So, but it's called I don't remember. Because like taking the defund, demilitarize. What is the word? Either way, this led me to a conversation to really look into what they mean by demilitarize. Is it demilitarize the police? Disarming the police. That's what it is. Disarming the police. Hold up. Let me get to some of these comments real quick. Whew, how are we doing? I know, and I still got a lot more to go, but I'm going through it because I think this is important, and I'm saying some things that I like. All right, so Reagan and Thatcher, yes. A lot of millennials don't know about that. No, they don't know about that. They don't. And I think they need to learn about that. Our Metro link run by the Ferengi. Well, I mean, if they are run by the Ferengi, they'd be easy to negotiate with, right? All you have to do with these corporations who love money more than people is to get them to realize that we're going to drag their name through the mud, and it's going to mess up their money. That's it. You talk about a boycott, and they'll start singing the song you want to sing. Yeah, I think that's good news, though. I think I'm going to say to Metrolink, good. It's good that you're doing what you said that you were going to do. You know what I mean? I'm not mad at you anymore. And they tried to blame it on Ford, saying that the Ford government said that you had to sell your property, and the Ford government said, we're still going to make them do it. So, don't know. Today, downtown was a massive bike for Black Lives Matter. Wow, that's amazing. And also, the Black Lives Matter protests haven't stopped. They have not stopped. This has been the biggest protest movement ever, apparently. There's just been protests every day in so many cities, and it hasn't stopped. So that's amazing. Teach empathy and compassion early and unpack the back package of privilege you're born with at an early age. Yes, I'm gonna get into writing children's stories, like in a big way. That's kind of what I'm about. The word was disarm. It was disarm. It came back to me. So my people were like, I don't know if we should disarm the police. And by that, we meant we should take away the deadly force. And this led us to the lovely conversation, Norway. Remember that Norway episode? That was one of my favorite episodes. We made jokes about, imagine like if the prisons in Norway were like America. And I talked about the reason why that is because in America, the police were invented and created in order to control a population of people that they wanted to oppress. I don't know how to say it much nicer than that. And in Norway, because everybody is homogenous, the police were created to restore balance. And they talked about treating the inmates in prison as humans, and not slave labor. And they were able to study. So just check out Norway and those police, before you start telling me that you can't have a different type of police, because we live on the same planet as Norway and we got like 99.9% same genes as the people in Norway. So we can have what Norway has. We just need to have the political will to not want to enslave people. That's all we need. So check out the Norway episode. I think there was even some jokes in that. It was a good episode. It's top 10 of these episodes for sure. We talked about South Africa and apartheid. I don't really have much to say about that. It's just really a blatant example of racism. It's an okay episode. And the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, I didn't get to that. I didn't get to show that, but they did this thing where if you committed war crimes, you could confess anything that you've done in the name of the war, in the name of racism, and be forgiven. And it was an emotional moment. And I know Canada talked about Truth and Reconciliation, and I know they did some Truth and Reconciliation, but the little that I gleaned, and it was only a little, it hasn't been enough. You know, Trudeau talks, right? But yeah, that would be something that I would investigate again. And then the episode of Why Are We Apolitical was one of my more ranty episodes. We talked a lot about, really, I was asking people who are religious and who believe in like God and fairness and spiritual values to just try to help and help create that beautiful paradise that they believe in on earth, and just try to get more people to be politically involved. What I would want to do is I'd want to see like presentations happening. Are churches still open? In churches, I'd want to really try to organize religious people who talk about love, to try to help. That's what I'd want to see, you know, because I know that before, with the abolitionist movement, Christians and other people were really into that, and they helped make it happen. So I'd like to see more of that. But that's a watchable video. Then we talked about environmental racism and COVID. This was a couple weeks ago, and we were worried that it was going to hit Black people and colored people more, and it did. Yes. Next, we talked about learning about post-traumatic slave disorder. Remember that one? That was a good one. Hold up. Syndrome, not disorder. My bad. It's a Vox video. Yeah. So just type in post-traumatic slave syndrome. That was a powerful video. It was so powerful that we spent a whole episode watching a lecture. That was cool. We just had like a watch party. The next one was, is our entertainment and media a distraction? I told you about how the news is biased. Imagine something that is not trying to be the news. Ben talked about before, what was it? It was like bread and circuses or something like that, where like, I think the fact that the NBA wasn't on and there was no shows that were new really contributed to the galvanization of the world. And so I think it is a distraction. Next, we talked about Canada, Turtle Island, but Canadian and First Nation relations on Turtle Island. And the things that I wanted to walk away with was, there was this website called nativeland.ca that I thought was fire. And it really outlined something that I learned. When we use the word First Nations, there's an S on it. You know what that S is for? Is because there wasn't one group of people. It was a lot of different people on Turtle Island doing their thing. Imagine like just a landmass and nations of people, like Earth. Earth is a landmass and nations of people. And then so now and I heard there was science fiction about this too, where the colonial encounter could be more thought of as an invasion, you know, and you think about that, it really changes it. It's like, imagine you're in Europe and someone's like, yeah, we're going to get on this boat and we're going to go over there as far as we could go. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like you're going to Mars. You've never been there before. No one you know has been there before. What kind of people are willing to go to Mars right now, right? They're going to be people who don't have much to lose, you know? So you got these people going to Mars, which is really North America. And then you got people who, instead of North America, were like already on Earth. They were like the United Nations, or like they're just a bunch of humans just living life. And then these people from a whole nother place show up with different kind of weapons and different kind of religion and different kind of disease. When you think about it like that, it puts things in perspective. You know, like it was an invasion. Also, the thing that I want to highlight is that history isn't over. It's never over. History is not something that we should talk about in the past, something that we're still living in. Like, I want to say this again. The Black Lives Matter movement is a continuation of the abolitionist movement. What abolitionist movement? The Middle Passage. Which people? The people who lived and had a culture and a life way before they were kidnapped and sold by white people. History is one long story, and we are still in it. It's not something that we can just talk about in the past. We are still in it. So what are you going to do in this story right now? Because we are still in it. The things, the agreements that were broken between the first Canadians or the French and the British and the indigenous First Nations people, we are living on that land. We are living as descendants or proponents of those invaders from the place who went to Mars. We are the people on the new land. We are them. It's not over. It's not like, Canada was founded and we're here. No, it's like these relationships are still being negotiated and we are a part of it. So who do you want to be in the story of history? That's what I'm asking you right now. That's what I'm asking me right now. That's what's up. Whew. Next, we talked about murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, right? And that episode was heavy. It was just women being kidnapped and murdered at crazy, like disproportionate numbers, and nobody's finding them. And it just made me ask this question: why aren't the police spending energy on that? The hell, you chasing people for weed, but you ain't got no energy to find missing and kidnap people all the time. What the hell? And why isn't this being taken more seriously by everyone? Like, how is it that a news network gets tired of these stories? Like, what? Like, you ever see how much fluff is in the news? Oh, a kitten was in a tree last night. Oh, what? Yo, it's real shit happening right now. Okay, that was a wild episode. But what I learned from that episode was there was a connection to the way we disrespect and disregard and almost hate women, and the way that we disrespect and disregard and hate the earth. There's a relation to that. We've inherited a type of culture that seems to despise women in the earth, to despise the things that create life. We just want to use it, and that was really an eye-opener for me. And then we talked about Say Her Name. You see, they relate. When a black man gets killed, everyone in the street. When a black woman gets killed, not so much. So we asked that question, and we had 3 answers. We have misogyny, right? And misogyny is a wild word. When you look it up, it's really like the hatred of women. The hatred, and that's heavy. Like, right? And it relates. It does relate. It's a thing that we need to look at. It's a thing that we need to look at seriously, and how we've all ingested it. It's not just patriarchy. It's not just that men rule. It's also that we don't respect or love women the way we need to. That's also a thing, right? You can insult a man by saying that he's acting like a woman. How is that an insult? Like this, our whole culture is just, we need work. Some say that maybe the reason why Breonna Taylor's murderers have not been brought to justice is because there's no video. That's an argument they make. I will say that I think today Oprah, for the first time, made her cover a picture of Breonna Taylor. So people are trying. People are trying. All right. Now, let's go to this. Mon says, we're all occupying land as settlers here, and we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land we are settled on every day and constantly challenge anti-Indigenous beliefs and biases that we grew up with, both internally and externally, from people, places, papers, and policies. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. Like even words like barbarian and savage, and just the way we think. We didn't, I'm telling you, First Nations has an S on it. Go to that site that I put, native-land.ca, and understand how many different languages, how many different groups of people. I don't mean groups of people like a bunch of friends or a family. I mean organized like a country, like people. And they were working together sometimes. Like it was a whole world. It was a whole world. So learn about that. I'm still learning about that. You know what I mean? I'm learning about that. All right. Then we went into individual versus systemic racism. I probably put it in systemic, right? And in this one, people wanted me to talk about Daryl something, and he is this black man who befriends KKK people and gets them to become good again, and that's really nice, and it's really nice. But what I came away from that conversation with is, when we talk about dealing with systemic racism, we're not talking about making a white person who hates black people nice again. We're talking about changing laws that protect police from killing black people. We're talking about redlining. We're talking about the way that Canada as a nation gets to decide how many indigenous people there are. Imagine an external body can tell you how many people are in your nation. What the hell? Like, we're talking about big things. And we're talking about, if we're going to talk about the KKK, we're talking about the way it is that the KKK haven't been taken down by the FBI yet. But they went to hell on the Black Panthers. And the Black Panthers were doing what? They're giving out breakfast and using their holding guns because they were allowed to, and just trying to protect people from police. What KKK people doing? Bombing homes and burning crosses and lynching people, and America ain't stepped to that yet. That's what we're talking about. Also, we're talking about the difference between bigotry, which is, a bad thing. The bigotry is terrible, and I'm not saying the Nazis are cool. Obviously, they're not. But like, we're talking about the type of violence that happens that is not named terrorist. We're talking about the violence that happens when we take people from their homes. My friend Kashoka posted this thing where it was like, when a poor person can't afford to take care of their kid, they take the kid away, give the kid to a stranger's house, and give that stranger's house money to take care of the kid. What you see wrong with that? Why wouldn't you, if you see someone too poor, take care of their kid, give them money to take care of their kid? Why are you gonna take the kid from the family? Like, what the hell? Like, we're talking about like bigger things, when we talk about systemic racism. But I think people like to focus on individual racism because it's easier just to say, oh, I like black people. I'm not the problem. It's bigger than that. But it's good that you like black people, and it's good that he's turning KKK people, but that's not what we're talking about. Universal basic income, we got to a little bit, but that wasn't the best conversation that we've had, to be honest. But basically, I think it's a good thing. Some people have tried to test it. It hasn't been tested too much. We still need more conversation. We're getting close. Portland protests. That's happening, right? Trump is wilding right now. Trump is wilding, been wilding, talking about holding the Bible, really perverting the Bible. I mean, there are a lot of good people who read the Bible. I'm just going to say that. I know I've been hard on him. A lot of people who love life, who read the Bible. And Trump is not one of them, okay? And him showing up with his stormtroopers and then holding the Bible is disgusting. It is. It's terrible. And like, I just hope we stand up to him. Really. That's what's up. But that was wild. That made me really feel like America's in a civil war right now, and we're just watching it. Like 100 years from now, they're going to read in the history books about the COVID and the Civil War. Like, this is the moment. And then I went on a search for good media. Shout out to the Downsview Advocate. Shout out to the People's Voice. Shout out to Al Jazeera, to Vox, to that dude Robert Reich, I think his name is. These people I've been leaning on. There's a dude named AC Plus TV. He makes cute and explainer videos. Shout out to them. Then we move to talk about reparations and just the wealth gap. Reparations. Reparation. I remember that was a good one. Really, with that, I would like to see laws changed and the illegal things happening that no longer happen. I mean, the money would be amazing too, but it would be amazing too. And I think it's warranted, So, yeah. And I wanted to know what reparations look like, but really, it looked to me like most of the people having that conversation didn't imagine the next step. We're still fighting to get recognized. We're still fighting to, and I'm going over time for this one because I'm just going to finish it. I'm sorry. We're still fighting to explain what systemic racism is and not to talk about how to live in a better world. And that was one of my frustrations in doing this whole thing and talking about this for so long. It was just spending so much energy trying to prove there was a problem and not talking about different ways we could live. And Just imagine your house is burning and you're like, help me, man, my house is burning. And someone's like, what's a fire? Prove to me that there's a fire. Just tired of that. Or people saying, call the fireman. I don't really like that phrase, fireman. Maybe you should change it to waterman. Like, that's what I feel like people who are like, we should refund the police and not defund the police. It's like, we're going to talk about, you're going to nitpick on a word, fam? Like, there's a fire. You want to help me with this fire or not? You know, so, and I think if anyone wants to argue that Black people or Indigenous people, anybody was historically, economically placed at a disadvantage, anybody who's trying to make that argument is not arguing in good faith and doesn't want to have the conversation really. So I don't, if I'm trying to put out a fire and you want to ask me what fire is while I'm holding a bucket of water, I don't want to talk to you no more. That I don't have time for that. Oof. Okay. And I mean, okay. And then there's what is democratic socialism? And democratic socialism is kind of it's a halfway step between capitalism and socialism. It's a combination of, it's a halfway step between capitalism and socialism. And I think it would be the least. I would want more. I'd want to be more radical, but I'll take that. Let's move on. We talked to Ben again, and this conversation with Ben was about Rome, and he made me see that if you look at like the iconography, the images that Rome uses and the architecture that Rome used back in the day, it's America's trying to replicate it, and even dirtier Nazis try to replicate it. It's a really, so when I think about the energy of the colonial as it relates to now, they're still trying to mimic that kind of energy. And he used the word, he taught me about imperium, which is like domination, which is power over. And that energy of I want to dominate, power over, is really prevalent. And I think it relates to some of our misogyny as well. Like, there are other ways of being, right? You can be creative, you can be collaborative, you can be communicative, you can be empathetic, you can synergize, you can blend, you can mix, you can transform. You don't just have to crush and dominate. Even our politics, we vote for this or that, right? If 100 people want red and let's say if 50 people want, if 51 people want red and 49 people want blue, we give them red. Why don't we give them purple? It was close. We have this either or. Whenever I'm running a session or a meeting or something like that, if I know a lot of the group wants something different, then even if there's a majority, I try to reframe the question to see if I can get more of a consensus. We don't rule by consensus in this democracy. We rule by who's the first to win. Power, power, power. And that energy is not, that energy probably knows a bit about misogyny. It's a conquering energy and it's dark. And he really taught me about that, which is a big deal. Then we went to a 3-for-1. We talked about Metrolink, which we talked about, and we followed that story up. Then we talked about the CBC, how they're doing stories about anti-Black racism, where a news reporter accidentally said the N-word behind closed doors when they were making a story about the N-word, and that was a 5-minute story, when we should be talking about defunding the police. But nobody wants to talk about defunding the police. They want to talk about anti-Black racism that doesn't actually matter, like using the N-word when nobody's listening to nobody. Annoying. But again, how do we make media that's about the issues, that's not going to piss off money, that's not going to piss off the politicians that we need at our meetings, the police, or still get us ads? Let's talk about not using the N-word. You see it, right? Things connect. Then we talked about AOC. You know we're big fans of AOC and her speech and how she took it to that other level. She took it systemic. Somebody was beefing with her and she said, no, this beef ain't between me and you. This beef is about your daughter. This beef is about husbands. This beef is about life. And she just took it to the next level. That was fire. And then I wanted to talk about Trump. I didn't get to it. And then I talked about Trump, but not just Trump. I said that the thing that we need to do, that I think we need to do, is not worry about Trump and to disempower him, because he has a lot of sycophants. Sycophants, is that the word? People who like follow you around and do your bidding. He's not competent, right? So he's dangerous, but he's not competent. Like if the people under him, if the Republicans under him just said, no, maybe we could avert some of these problems. And the thing about, I say burning it all down because I'm thinking about climate change. I'm thinking about climate change. As much as I'm thinking about human rights, I'm also thinking about climate change, because you know that when the rain falls, it don't fall on us all equally, right? The poorer you are, the blacker you are, the closer to the equator you are. When climate change hits, it's gonna hit the poor people worse, and it's gonna be caused by us in the West. And every moment we spend fighting with Trump about something stupid like whether or not you should inject bleach is a moment that we're not dealing with the problem that is above us, and that's a thing. That's a thing. So I just hope that we just have a mutiny, or just, we talked about billionaires for 2 episodes. The first episode was the first episode was good. The second episode was good too. I had fun in the second episode. There was this site where we were scrolling to see how long. It took 15 minutes of scrolling, and we sang a little song. It was a good moment. People like that. But the thing that I want people to understand about billionaires is billionaires are modern day plantation owners, right? So, like, they're slave owners. They abuse human labor. They abuse human laws to make money, make more money than they could ever spend. And it makes me sad that not only do we live in a society that made laws to do that, it makes me sad that there are intelligent human beings that still think that having $1 billion is ever justifiable or needed, and that a fair society would let that happen. And when I investigated and really tried to understand why they believe that, they just believe there's just no trust in the government. There's no trust in human beings. There's no trust that anybody else could create a better system. So when you have no trust, I understand that you would settle, but it makes me sad, because why do we need to settle? Like, we're flying to Mars right now. You're telling me we can't figure out how to share money? We're flying to Mars right now. Like, come on, like, talk to me. Really? So, I just hope that we can imagine better. And that was the other thing that I learned when we asked you, what kinds of world do you want to live in? There wasn't that much. People didn't, oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking to nobody. There wasn't that much. People were like, what? People know what they don't like, but people don't imagine what they do like. So, yeah. And then finally, the last thing, I think I read a piece about how much police were spending on bullets, and Tory made me very mad. John Tory, he's the mayor of Toronto, if you don't know. He made me really mad because, yeah, he did. Because, we're talking all this Black Lives Matter stuff, and he was like, okay, I got a Black Lives Matter proposal. How about we increase the budget? What? Give them cameras. And he said a bunch of rhetoric about some things, and it was like, really? They couldn't even lower the budget 10%. We talk about billionaires. The police budget is $1 billion, and there's not enough money for real first responders. People falling out of buildings. Uncles in their home. You call the police because your uncle's having a mental episode, and you shoot him. It's simple. To a hammer, everything looks like a nail. All we're saying is, we don't need 50 hammers, man. Let's drop half of that budget, and can we get some like food and some proper things for humans out here? No, more hammers. So this woke me up. I'm gonna pay attention to every single ward, and we're gonna have conversations about what all these councils are doing. Because Toronto, nah. How you gonna raise the budget when we ask you to stop? How you gonna raise the budget? Nah. So that's kind of all the places we've been, or most of the places that we've been over the last month and a half or whatever. We talked about a lot of different things. I wanted to put it all in the context. And then to find the final story was yesterday, where we found out that 83% of people affected by COVID in Toronto are racialized as Black. But we don't want to talk about systemic racism. What? Are you serious? It's obvious. So, yeah. I really, 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 really appreciate the journey and the conversations, and all of the things that I said, the things that I learned. Some of them are my opinions, but some of them are based off the things that you've all taught me, in terms of answering my little Facebook posts, or even your opinions. Even when I don't agree with you, you taught me things. You taught me about how we learn and how we have our opinions. And I'm sure my opinions come from some of my experiences, but yeah, and I think the thing that I want to give you all is just to before I go for a minute, is to challenge you to dream better, to ask for a better world, and to be a part of a better world. Because these politicians, they will bend to us if we are loud enough. They will bend to us if we're loud enough, but we have to dream bigger. We have to ask for more and not settle, period. And we also have to not get selfish. You know, Black people especially, like, what's wrong with defunding the police? What the hell? Why do we have to have this? Why do I have to argue with family members about defunding the police? You don't like the phrase? You think they should have $1 billion to spend $2 million on bullets? Come on. That's it. Because I'm not sure if we're going to get anywhere if we're not united. And just because you don't like anti-Black racism doesn't mean that you're united on the solutions. And one of the solutions is defunding the police straight up. Because until we can trust the government should not have so much money on guns. They shouldn't. You see what Trump is doing. That's a fascist state right there. You know what I mean? And if the military and the government were not so overfunded in Toronto, no, they're overfunded in Toronto, but they're overfunded in America. If the American people didn't let their military get so overfunded, didn't let their police get so overfunded, they wouldn't be able to turn bullets on them in a protest like this. They wouldn't be able to do it. The less funded a police system is, the less they can fucking run you, the less they can control you and shoot you when you ask for change. So, like, asking for your tax dollars to be spent on building community is not ridiculous. What do you think they're supposed to be spent for? Like, so that's what's up, you know. And when anybody says, yo, please defund the police, don't say support Black business, say defund the police. You know, like, straight up, we need to be united on this. And we need to be united, meaning all this transphobia, all this homophobia, all this bullshit that we're doing to disunite us is not helping either. We need to be united on this, straight up. That's what I'm seeing. I'm reading the comments whenever, and they're just transphobic. Like, what does that have? It's ridiculous. We're talking about human rights. That's what's up. I mean, you can have your freedoms and your beliefs and your opinions, but you should respect my humanity. And my humanity, the bravest people right now are the trans people standing up for all human rights. And why is that? Maybe it's because they got nothing to lose, you know, because they know about disenfranchisement. Why are we having them disenfranchised? They should not be alone, and you should not be turning your backs on them like that. That's what I'm saying, you know. So this is the continuation of an abolition movement. Billionaires are basically plantation owners. You know what I mean? We on the plantation still, but now we have to pay for our own food and board. That's what's up. You know, the less militarized a government is the less they can shoot you for having peaceful protests. Ask Ben about that shit. That's real. You know, and so I'm switching off from doing some other stuff and making videos to try to teach people who aren't already set in their ways and explain things simply. But I didn't want to hold anything back. That's really what's up. Thank you all again for your attention and for your time. And I hope we continue to try to build a better world that we can live in, so we can be proud of our present and our history, and that we can feel safe in our countries and in our world. All right. Wakanda hug. And I'm going to see what my people said before I go. Oh, that episode was great. Yeah, kept going. Yeah, to Hammer, everything was like a nail bars. Thank you. Yes, it was. Feeling pretty barsy about that. And thank you for taking us with you on this journey and letting us learn and grow with you. The space you created is very special and unforgettable. We won't settle, and we will continue to fight for change by any means necessary. Love you. Love you too. When the disenfranchised people's lives improves, everybody. You remember that video? The video with the Black Lives Matters funders, when they were so eloquent and powerful and strong and stuff like that. That video was beautiful. It's true. Like, yo, and you're on a pyramid. Everyone's trying to get to the top of the pyramid, like greedy. Why don't we change the damn game? I hate musical chairs. We're all playing musical chairs. Everyone's hoping to win. I hate it. I hate it. We don't need to play musical chairs, man. There are better games. There are better games. We can just dance to the music. We don't have to fight over the chairs. Okay. Wakanda hug. I'll see y'all soon. Peace up.